Hello, my dear Franken friends, and welcome to Spookyou, your one-stop shop for all things ghastly and ghoulish. I'm your host, Barnabas Vixen. How horrible of you to join us. Curl up, invite your friends, and by all means, make sure those lights are out. That way it's harder to tell what may or may not be lurking around you. There's nothing like a good mystery, am I right? Tonight will feature a singular tale of devilish design curated by those wicked weavers of woe. And without further ado, allow me to pass the reins on over to our vivacious voiceover virtuoso Trey Falco for tonight's sinister story. Please keep all limbs and side covers at all times. We wouldn't want anything to go missing now, would we?
Whether or not you do it yourself, surely you've heard of the fact that some people don't like having their feet hang over the edge of the bed at night. I am one of those people, and I believe I have a good reason. I was 10 years old and we had recently moved into a new house, and about 2 weeks in, I inexplicably started feeling very uneasy at night when I would go to bed. There was nothing outright scary happening, it just seemed as if the normal bumps and creaks in the house were amplified, like the darkness seemed darker, the shadows more pronounced. In the following weeks, my parents were going to order me a new, bigger bed, so unfortunately for the interim, I had to deal with my current bed, an old, worn-out hand-me-down that was, well, it was too short for me. It first started on a Tuesday night, and I don't really know why I remember that, but I do. And at this point, I'd never had any experiences that would have made me afraid to have my feet hanging off the edge of the bed. But that Tuesday night, I must have fallen asleep with my toes just past the threshold. And at some point in the middle of the night, I was awoken by what felt like a pinching at the tip of my toes. It didn't really hurt per se, but it wasn't exactly the most comfortable thing to have going on. So I whipped my feet up onto the bed, and as soon as my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I inspected my toes. Everything seemed to be fine, and I went and looked over the edge of the bed and found nothing out of order. I convinced myself that I must have been dreaming and quickly fell back asleep. I woke up the next morning and checked my toes again, finding no evidence of anything having happened. So I put it out of my mind and went on with the rest of my day. That night, I crawled back into bed again and attempted to go to sleep, not even realizing that I had let my feet dangle off the edge of the bed. At some point during the night, I was again awoken by some sort of feeling on my feet, and this time it felt like a tiny nibble, like a bug bite. So I quickly got my feet up and inspected them, and this time noticed a small, discolored mark on the tip of my big toe. Again, I rationalized that it must have been a spider bite or something of that sort and went back to bed, this time being sure to keep my feet within the confines of my bed. After doing my best to keep my feet at the threshold of the bed for a few nights, I began to realize how much I missed stretching out completely, and I told myself that it was just a random happening that I got bit by a spider. So that night, I stretched out and voluntarily let my feet hang off the end of the bed. I fell asleep quickly and slept solidly until I was jolted awake at some point in the night. I drew my feet up onto the bed and inspected my toes. This time, there was something more than a simple spider bite.
What a delectable morsel of a story. Something short and sinister to get that blood flowing. Hopefully that'll hold you over while we talk about one of our sponsors, Big Frank's Body Shop. Frank is a frequent listener of Spookyou and has immeasurable knowledge when it comes to your body. Yes, you. Yours specifically. Every nook and cranny, every wrinkle and pore. Your very own biological mechanic. He has arms for when yours inevitably give out, various hearts and lungs to postpone that final breath. And right now, when you enter the coupon code SPOOKalicious at checkout, you'll receive 10% off your first purchase of $2,500 or more. Just enter SPOOKalicious at checkout for 10% off your first purchase of $2,500 or more. What a frighteningly good deal. That's Big Frank's Body Shop, because who could ever know more about your delicate body than old Frank here? Nobody. Not even you. Up next, we got a story so scary, you may just want to go ahead and mute your speakers now. It's okay, we don't judge around here. Okay, Frank judges a little, but it's warranted and you know it.
Each of my toes, except for the two pinkies, had small incisions at the top of them, slowly dripping blood. I felt something moving on the inside of my toes, like something had gone into the cuts and was moving around inside of them. I tried to scream, but I couldn't seem to find my voice, and I was stricken silent with fear. Suddenly, through the blood coming out of my toes emerged a small, tick-looking bug. And when I say small, I mean small. There must have been 30 that came out of each toe, and I felt them travel from the middle of my foot, and though they were small, I could just barely see them move under my skin, crawling over my veins and the bones in my feet. From the inside, they all headed to the bottom of my foot and exited through the small but painful cuts at the ends of my toes. They first swam through the small pool of blood that had formed from my cuts, proceeded to crawl to the end of my bed and drop to the floor, forming a line and heading to a shadowy corner in my room. And then I saw it. Maybe the size of a Raggedy Ann doll, this thing was engulfed in the shadows in the corner of my room, and the only thing I could see was a big set of green eyes. Its shape was boxy in that it didn't have the outline of what a humanoid figure normally would. Its shoulders were squared and its head bigger than what would regularly be considered proportionate. It had thin legs and seemed to wobble as it was top-heavy. The only motion besides its light swaying was a barely visible shaking, which I was somehow able to discern as it laughing. The tiny bugs crawled in a single-file line to the small figure. It was as if it had waited for me to notice, because once I did, after a few seconds of what I'm certain was laughing, it moved. It made sure to stay in the shadows, presumably to hide its features, but it slowly and awkwardly made its way to my now partially open closet, which I have no doubt in my mind I'd closed the door to before bed that night. Once it was fully inside my closet, I saw it peek its head out and heard a barely audible, scratchy chuckle before it retracted back inside, and my closet door slowly creaked close, through some manner of which I'm not privy to, as there is no way that thing was tall enough to reach the doorknob. The small bugs continued to march in line, only now they were traveling under the door and into my closet. I eventually found myself able to scream, and you better believe I did. I screamed until long after my parents were in my room and my mom was squeezing me in her arms. My dad frantically searched for the source of the blood that now stained my sheets while I was too hysterical to tell him, and I finally calmed down and presented my feet to him. He looked horrified as he saw the incisions on my 8 toes, by now bleeding somewhat heavily. My mom checked the closet on my insistence but found nothing out of place. She even furiously sorted through the small pile of belongings I had stuffed in there during the move, and didn't see anything even closely resembling what I told her to look out for, neither a small laughing man or the bugs. My parents took me to the hospital where I got 18 stitches total on my 8 assaulted toes. I never saw the tiny invasive bugs again, nor did I ever see the small laughing little man thing that hid himself in the shadows that night. I often find myself wondering what or even who he was, and what the ultimate goal was in sending his legion of bugs after my toes. But what I do know, however, is that since that night, I have never once slept without my feet securely within the confines of the edge of my bed. And I never will again.
Welcome back, my darling deviants. Well, tell me, did you enjoy that twisted tale? Of course you did. I knew you had that air about you, that hunger for the horrific and the macabre. So, did we spook you? If not, then file a complaint with our complaint department detailing all accounts of non-spookiness you found in this video, and we'll get back to you in 2 to 3 millennia. Give or take a business eon or 2. However, if you've enjoyed what you've just heard this evening, then make sure you leave a like on this video and annihilate that subscribe button. Such a small act of obedience is exactly what we need to put the food on the table around here. There's only so many days we can have refried kidney and toe jam hash before I'm absolutely sick of it. Spoiler alert, that ship sailed long ago. Now, I must bid you adieu. I've many things to take care of, and this outro is eating into my day off. Run along now. Have no fear, we'll be here every Tuesday and Thursday to bring you another terrible tale. Go forth, my ghastly gang, and stay spooky.